You're listening to Secrets of Tomorrow's Leaders, brought to you in partnership by JCI Santa Clarita and RK Studios. My name is Koren Young. I'm the host of this show, and I'm here in the City of Santa Clarita Council Chambers for a very special show. I'm joined here by the mayor, Mr. Cameron Smyth.
Thanks, Koren. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good. It's cool to be in here and have full access to the council chambers.
Do you like sitting up here on the dais, like you're a council member?
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure we were at least 6 feet apart.
We are definitely that.
Took the furthest seat from you. And whose seat am I in? Am I in Marcia McLean's
That
seat?
would be Councilmember McLean's seat,
yeah.
At least for now. We'll see if that changes on Tuesday with our rotation, but yes, that's Councilmember McLean's.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because today is your last day as mayor. Tomorrow, Councilmember Bill Miranda becomes mayor, right? Do you and him just switch seats, or do you play musical chairs and do a whole rotation?
Yeah, no, and I know that that's sometimes a little bit confusing for people, the way Santa Clarita is set up. But when we incorporated, the voters decided they didn't want a directly elected mayor, and so the system was set up that's still in place now that the voters select the 5 city council members, and then the mayor is selected amongst the 5 of the council members. And we have an annual rotation. And come tomorrow night, Bill Miranda, who is the mayor pro tem, as you said, will transition into the position as mayor and will be the first Latino mayor in the city's history. And so as part of that rotation, then we will vote for a new mayor pro tem who would then be in line for transitioning to mayor a year from now. So then once you do that, the only seats that are official are obviously the mayor's here, and then the mayor pro tem is the one to my left.
I gotcha.
And so then the rest of the council is just kind of sprinkled in.
So you wouldn't necessarily play musical chairs. Somebody else, the mayor pro tem, would get that seat.
Correct. So unless I went to becoming mayor pro tem, which I don't anticipate, then Bill and I wouldn't switch. So I'll rotate around, and with Jason Gibbs being elected, we'll have a new council member. So we'll have a little bit of musical chairs tomorrow night.
Right. So he won't necessarily be taking Bob Keller's seat. He'll be wherever.
Correct. So
interesting. Okay.
I think I'm going to use my seniority. It's like picking an office in Congress. The seniority gets choice. So I think I'll pull that on Jason, and so he gets whatever chair is left.
That sounds pretty fair.
Absolutely.
Okay, so for those that don't know, Cameron Smyth is the mayor of Santa Clarita. He has been on our city council, first elected in 2000, has been elected 4 times, including just a month ago. Is that right?
So this would be it would be my 4th election to the council. I was just thinking that it was just finished up my 4th term as mayor and have been elected 4 times. Obviously, with a little bit of a sabbatical in between those terms.
Yeah, in 2006, right? You left to join the California State Assembly for California District 38 as our assemblyman for 6 years. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, all 3 terms. Term limits have changed since I left, but when I was there, the seat was for 3 2-year terms.
Oh, how cool! Okay, so you got reelected twice, which is the maximum.
I did. So in 2012, as I was termed out, I decided not to seek any elected office at that point. I have 3 young. Well, they're not as young anymore, but at the time I had 3 very young kids, and I had spent a lot of time away during my time in the legislature, so it was important for me to come back and kind of reestablish myself as a father and as a husband, and join the private sector, and that's what I did.
Cool. Well, as this show is about leadership and getting advice for tomorrow's leaders, I wanted to talk to you because this is obviously something that you know a lot about as an elected official here in Santa Clarita and also in the state. And I would imagine that started long before 2000 when you were first elected to the City Council of Santa Clarita. How did you get started in leadership positions? What was your start there?
So I think I probably had a little bit of an advantage over many of my peers in that my father was in a position of leadership, sometimes a little too much leadership for me. As growing up is having your dad as the superintendent of the Hart School District. When I was growing up here and went to Placerita and Hart, having your dad being kind of the boss of your schools, and when you're going from 13 to 17 or 12 to 18. That's kind of a tough range. But I realized as time wore on that I picked up a lot about leadership, from my dad, and not necessarily directly asking questions, but just kind of learning and observing how he interacted, how he was able to stay as the superintendent for almost for 16 years. You didn't really appreciate that at the time until now that in my professional life, seeing how difficult that is to manage a school district and a board, and also my first job in politics was working for the state assembly member and state senator from this area, Pete Knight, who was also a colonel, in the Air Force, was an astronaut, and so I had two very good mentors about leadership. And then certainly you always adopt your own style and what works for you. But I definitely had a good advantage with some good teachers.
Yeah, I know before your dad was superintendent of the Hart District, he was principal at Placerita, right?
He was.
So that's another leadership position.
Yeah, well, that's what brought our family to Santa Clarita, actually. Before the year I was born, my dad was offered the job as a principal at Placerita. And it's kind of fun, my two of my kids have graduated from Placerita as well. And on a couple open houses, they lay out all the old yearbooks. So I was able to show them the yearbook from when my dad was there. Of course, they were more interested in finding my 7th grade picture.
Yeah, of course.
Which I did not want them. I tried to hide those yearbooks, but they got to see my dad when he was the principal there.
And in addition to working in the school system, he was also on the city council here, right? From the mid '90s up until when, like.
He was. Yep. He joined the city council after he retired from the Hart District in 1992. He then was elected to the city council in '94. And kind of the joke, he got the nickname of Landslide Clyde because he was elected by a total of 16 votes, got him elected to the city council. And in fact, on election day, he was only up by 8.
Wow.
So no one, from that point on, no one could ever tell me that if their vote doesn't count, your vote doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because the very first election that I was really involved with, my dad won literally by 16 votes.
Yeah, that's one family's worth. I heard a rumor. I don't know if you can tell me if this is true, but when I was I went to Santa Clarita Elementary School for a couple of years, and nicknamed Robot Park. I don't know if that robot's still there, but they told me his official name was Clyde the Slide. Is he named after your dad?
He was not named after my dad. No.
Is there another Clyde?
I think maybe they just kind of rhymed it with slide,
Oh.
But there's like Clyde the Glide, Clyde Drexler, the NBA player, called him Clyde the Glide. So, yeah. But no, Landslide Clyde was my dad.
Okay. So I'm a member of JCI Santa Clarita, and we often talk about different members of our organization, both nationally and locally. And I know that you always come up as somebody who was a former JC. And I actually only recently did the math because we just had our 40 under 40 top 100. And when we look at the previous honorees, I think you were in the first class, right, in 2009. And I remember thinking, like, wow, they knew even back then that Cameron Smyth was going to rise to greatness. But then I was like, wait a minute, he was elected to
I was
city
already
council.
in the I'd already been 2 terms. Yeah.
Yeah, years before that, and then in the assembly, years before that too. So, so you kind of came back. In which years were you an active JC?
So I was one of the founding members of the organization. So, that takes you back. Late 90s, early 2000s.
98.
Yeah. And I was honored with an Outstanding Young Californian Award for the Jaycees in the early years. And I think it's amazing to see that the organizations continue to grow and thrive and help develop the next generation of leaders, well after I've aged out, if you will, and it's been great to see.
Did you stay in until you were 40?
I think I probably did not. Once I got elected to the legislature, and all. It was the time just wasn't going to work out. So I think I kind of rotated out after that once it really got up and going, and had a great leadership crew to carry off that kind of after the first generation and then pushing it through. So I think I stopped becoming a member, I think, when I got to the legislature.
Yeah, that makes sense. Which brings me to another question. You got started in politics very young. You were 29 when you first got elected to this
28.
City Council, right? 28.
Gotta be.
Okay. Yeah, well, I guess we got to be
That's right.
accurate about
That's
it.
right.
And even in the assembly, you were in your 30s.
I was. So. Things are different now in the assembly because of term limits. But there was the year I was elected to the assembly, I was the second youngest member of the assembly at the time. But as with term limits, you've seen the age has gone down. The average age now. We have a new member who just got sworn in, who's 25 to the legislature. So wow. I think he is maybe not the youngest ever, but he's certainly the youngest now.
Wow, how neat is that?
Yeah, and I think it's important. I think a state as diverse as California, you don't only need regional diversity, but I think having a diversity in age and certainly ethnicity and gender and all that. California is 40 million people. With the one thing I really learned when I was up there was truly how diverse and how separate it is there in California, and having representatives from all over the state with all different backgrounds, I think, is great.
Yeah. So you knew early on, even at a young age, that you wanted to be involved in politics.
No,
right?
you know what? Honestly, no. I was never in ASB or student government or any of that growing up. When I graduated from college, I helped out on my dad's campaign, and that kind of got me started and got me interested because I didn't have a job at the time, and I was just kind of finding my career path, and ended up really kind of getting involved with him and got hooked, so to speak, and ended up getting hired as a staff member for the state legislature. And it kind of happened organically, to be honest. It happened early, but it was still very organic.
Yeah. Okay. And your kids, do they have political ambitions? I think they were involved in student government, right? My middle child, my younger son, was involved a little bit. It's kind of funny. I think they like the idea and they like the campaigning. Everyone likes campaigns, right? There's a lot of energy. It's very competitive. A lot of hard work. Election day is like game day. But 4 years ago, when I got sworn in the first time, I think that cured my kids of actually running, because my son was asking me, like, how long is this meeting going to go? Sitting here for a few hours. So we'll see. I think I hope to pass along the idea of service, which both of my parents passed on to my brother and I. My brother's chose to go into the military. He's currently a colonel in the Air Force, and I obviously chose this path. But that idea of service came from my parents, who were both educators in the public system. My dad was in the military as well, and so I hope to pass that on to my kids. Whether they choose to go through the same path that I've chosen is not really important to me, but that they take that heart of service and the importance of giving back. Yeah, I know leadership definitely runs in your family. I just recently found out when I was working on the Henry Mayo home tour videos, I saw your mom's name. She's been involved in that for a while, I think, right?
For as long as I can remember. The hospital was always very important to our family. My dad was president of the board at one point, and my mom was president of the home tour at one point. So it's always been something that's been very important to them. So I know that my dad, and now I get a lot of the visibility and credit, but my mom has spent her life as well giving back to Santa Clarita, just in different ways. Yeah, that's so cool. In the 20 years that you've been in a leadership position here in the city of Santa Clarita, what do you think are your favorite things? What's something that you're most proud of? I think once I made and kind of got the understanding that you just have to follow what you think is right. You have a tendency anybody does when you're elected, you want to say yes. You want to help people. That's why you usually get here. But you realize quickly that you just can't do that. And so once I came to that understanding and kind of acknowledgement within myself, it made it a lot easier to cast some difficult votes. I think about the most difficult vote I cast early on was putting our trash contract out to bid. It seems very local government-y, but that was something that was really difficult. At the time, the local trash companies had really been deeply involved in our community charities, in donations and support. And as the discussion came up about putting it out to bid, all of those people who were supporters of mine and that I'd known over the years were in this audience demanding that we keep the contract as it is. And it was not the right decision. The right decision was to put the contract out to bid. We did. Ended up saving the taxpayers $30 million over the life of the contract because it was the right thing. And so I think once you kind of get over that, that challenge, it makes it a lot easier. But I also think about being in the legislature and being appointed to serve as the chairperson of the Assembly Local Government Committee. As a Republican legislator, I was in the minority, and to have the Democrat speaker appoint me to that position over a number of Democrat members of his own caucus, really kind of validated why I went to Sacramento. I didn't go up there to be a bomb thrower, to just sit and vote no on everything. I went up there to try to be solution oriented and to have that kind of validated by being appointed to chair, and to be the only minority party member to chair a major policy committee, really kind of reinforced that. And so I took great pride in that as a validation for why I went to Sacramento to serve the 38th district. And that was the priority, not a partisan policy, but what I thought was right for the state.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty hard for a Republican assembly member to try to bully his way through a Democrat-controlled
It's not,
assembly.
that you'd be surprised how many try, but it's certainly not. To me, that was not my path.
Right. Yeah, you pretty much know you have to work across party lines
if you want to get something done. Certainly as a member of the minority party, and I kind of made that commitment that if I was going to be gone 100 nights a year away from, I had a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old at the time, and then my daughter was born when I was there. If I was going to be gone and miss so much of that, I wanted to make it worth it. And I would say that my very last night in the legislature, there was an issue about timber. What do we know about timber here in Southern California? But it's obviously a main industry in the northern part of the state, and they were 2 votes short. And I got a call from the Governor Brown at the time, and asked for my vote. And I thought, this is going to be the last vote I make in my legislative career. And I've got the Democrat governor of California calling me to ask for my vote. And I was happy to, at that point then, give it and put the bill out, and be kind of the last vote of my career. So it was good.
As an assembly member in the state, when we're very local centered here, you have to learn a lot about different parts of the state and different types of economies and stuff. How do you go about doing that?
Again, so much of it happens organically, and I've shared this with Christy Smith when she went, Dante Acosta, now Suzette, that you really don't know what's going to come up on your plate. I had my ideas when I went to the legislature, and I thought, I was prepared. I had served as a staffer for a state legislator, 6 years in local government. I knew what I was doing. But the issues that you face in California are so broad. And I ended up chairing the local government committee that I never thought I would do. I co-founded the Assembly, or the Legislative Animal Protection Caucus. I didn't realize I'd get involved in animal issues. I cast the deciding vote, on a timber issue. I co-founded the Republican Caucus Energy, Economy, and the Environment Work Group. Things that, again, I didn't have any idea about going in, and I ended up taking a leadership role in these new policy issues. And so that's what I share with not only the legislators, but I also, talked to Jason Gibbs, who, we were talking about coming in. 4 years ago, I ended up becoming kind of the lead policy person on cannabis because of the proposition that passed in 2016 to legalize recreational cannabis in California. That had an impact on the city. So I ended up taking a role on cannabis policy. I now chair the community's homeless task force, things that, again, I wasn't as involved in prior to, and now I'm playing a lead role in the idea of creating our own local health department. So I tell Jason and anyone, just be open. You have your ideas, what you think you're going to tackle, but the circumstances change, and you have to be ready to respond to it.
Now, how often does somebody on the city council have like kind of a dissenting view versus like everyone agreeing? Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, we've got 5 Republicans out of 5 people on the city council. How often do you have somebody that says, you know what, let's not do this? Can we discuss it?
Well, I would say, the good thing is local government in California, county supervisor, city council, school boards, water boards, they are nonpartisan. Certainly people have their party registration, but if you look on the ballot for the city council race, it doesn't say, R or D or green or independent like it would for Congress or the legislature. So, you are truly judged on your performance. In a way, people can't cheat and say, well, okay, as a Democrat, I'm voting for all Democrats. I'm a Republican, I don't know them, but they're a Republican, I'm going to vote for them. It forces you as an elected, to really work on the issues, and as well as the voters, because you don't have that kind of that lead to, or an indicator of who you might support. So, and most issues that we deal with here are not partisan issues.
Right. They're supposed to be nonpartisan.
Correct.
But like lately, everything's going to have some kind of a slant.
It is, and we certainly have had our discussions and our disagreements on issues. You go ahead and take the cannabis policy one. I was one that felt that there are ways that we could have cannabis policies that weren't just an outright ban. But I was on the losing, on the short end of that kind of vote. So there's plenty of issues, but most importantly is all 5 members truly love this community, and I don't question any of their motives on their votes because I know that they believe they're truly doing what they think is right for the city, and that's I can live with that.
Yeah, well, that does bring me to another question. With a city that's so kind of split down the middle as far as party affiliation, like when you look at the latest congressional race, it was like it ended up being like 50 point something to 50 point something, right? Like I think even like a couple decimal points over. So we're right down the middle. How do you make sure that you are able to represent people on both sides?
So again, what I've learned and the way I try to govern is I have my core beliefs, and whenever people ask me about an issue or I'm casting a vote on an issue, I do the best I can to articulate why I've taken that position. And I've learned that if people, even if they don't agree, that you've taken the time to hear their position, and kind of digest their policy and then respond that if you can't agree and why you can't, people at least respect that you've taken the time to be heard, mm-hmm. and that you have you've provided a forum for their position, and you've given it a good faith belief and a good faith study. And I've learned, like, I am, these are my policies, this is my vote, and people, our system allows all of us to be under public review, a job performance review every mm-hmm. 4 years. And if they want to go a different direction, they certainly, people certainly can. And I think that you have to kind of get to that point. But it is important, I believe, that you're authentic about your position and your beliefs and the reason why you're voting the way you are.
Has there ever been a position that you've held that years later you've kind of changed your position?
Sure. I think the issue of homelessness is one that I've really, as I've studied over the years and become more in depth in the policy and understanding, the reasons for homelessness and the circumstances, that is very much changed. And when I was first on the council, every year it was always a debate about where the temporary shelter was going to go. And there was always contention in the audience. And over the years, the fact that last year we voted for a full-time year-round shelter in Santa Clarita, and there was no opposition, really, I think, spoke to how the narrative on homelessness has changed, not only with me and the council, but also within the community as people have begun to understand it more. And so I think that's an issue that I never would have thought I would be chairing the community's task force on homelessness.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten to be a more prominent issue, I suppose. Has there been any decisions that you've made or anything that you've done in your 20 years or even in your time in the assembly that you look back and say that wasn't the right choice, and can you do anything about it later?
So in the assembly, you actually can change your vote as long as the vote doesn't change the ultimate outcome.
Oh, then what good is it?
Right. So, right. And so you see that, so I'm sure it's usually on, the opportunity, give you opportunity if you've inadvertently, because in the assembly you vote electronically. So there are times when, everybody, when you got hundreds of votes coming down in the last week, that you may hit the wrong button on accident and not pay attention that you voted no or voted aye. And there's the opportunity to.
No, so you just press the other button?
Well, once the clock runs out, then you have to go through a whole vote change and announce it, publicly. And so, but I think on most, significant issues, whether it be here at the city or the assembly, I'd like to think that I really did my homework. But I think in the assembly, there's probably more than here in the city, because when you get to the end of session, you're literally voting on, 4 bills a minute. It just starts.
Wow,
that may be
round.
A little bit.
Yeah.
That might be a little hyperbole, but you're getting through. You've got to get through 150, 200 votes in a 2-day period. You don't always know.
Yeah, you can't possibly.
And so you have to. Sometimes you're relying on your fellow assembly members, or you're looking at your analysis, and sometimes you're just not always gonna be there. So. But I will tell you, a good lesson to me was very early on. One of my first committee votes in the assembly, I had promised a legislator that if they had taken the amendments, I would vote for the bill. And sure enough, they took the amendments, which was fine. But then one of the Democrat members wasn't going to vote for the bill, or was left the committee hearing. So they were 1 vote short. And so now I had committed to vote for this because they took my amendments, but I did it not thinking that I would be the deciding vote, that the vote would already go out. But, I had made my commitment, and it was literally probably the first week. And I knew that people were looking at that, and that was going to set up people's perception of me, that I committed to something, and then the first chance I get, I back out. And so I made the decision to vote for it because I committed to it, and I put the bill out, and right off the bat, people were not pleased within my own caucus and others, but I said, look, I gave my word. And, I have to honor that. So it was a good lesson, and it's a good reminder that, and I tell everybody, don't commit, don't ask for amendments to a development project, a committee bill or something if there's no chance of you supporting it. Because I genuinely believe if you ask for something and then they accept it, then you have to follow through.
Right. That's the deal.
Right.
That's the compromise.
And I don't, I have no problem saying, look, or with somebody saying, look, I'm never going to get there. I just fundamentally disagree that, with this policy, and there's never, you can get there. And there were plenty of times when I feel that way too, but you got to be honest and tell people, hey, up here, you got to find your 3 votes somewhere else, because I'm not going to get there.
So what happens then when people are calling you and asking you for something? Are they just trying to convince you?
No, yeah. I have a real open door policy, and anybody that has a project before the city or something, they absolutely should come and talk with me and walk me through their proposal. And I'll certainly provide feedback, and I'll let them know that I'm probably going to be asking some questions about X, Y, and Z during the hearing. But you save all that for the public environment and the public hearing, so that people can see where you're coming from, and the questions can be asked and answered in a public forum.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's good to know, because I've never seen how any of that stuff works. I wanted to ask you specifically about this year. 2020 has been a rough year for everybody individually, for their businesses, for the cities. How is the city of Santa Clarita doing as a city?
So it's been certainly we haven't been immune to the impacts of the pandemic, either with those people who have been infected, residents that have been infected, or businesses that have been impacted, and certainly our city budget has taken a hit. Fortunately, we're not in a position like the city of LA that has talked about major layoffs, the city of Santa Monica that has multi-million-dollar deficits. We've been able to absorb much of the economic hit without reducing any services to the community, whether it be our streets and roads, our graffiti abatement. We've always been able to keep our parks and trails open. The turf continues to be renewed. The trails continue to be cleared. So we've really worked hard to try to maintain that level of that standard that people have expect from us. And quite frankly, we've moved forward on a number of key capital projects that I know people are looking forward to. We've got our community center in Canyon Country we've continued construction on that. The new fire station 104 over in Golden Valley, that was opened this year. The new sheriff station construction continues on Golden Valley Road. We opened up the new senior center, a new park up in Plum Canyon, the the largest all-inclusive play area in northern LA County was opened this year. So we were able to continue to make progress on projects, several of which, like the community center and the sheriff station, that funding had already been approved. So that money had already been allocated and out the door, so to speak. So we look forward to 2021. We'll be able to open the doors on the community center, open up the new sheriff station, things that were really still very important to the community.
And if things, we don't know what 2021 is going to bring. If things stay kind of shut down until April or July, is the city able to afford to keep operating?
Sure. We have had to put some things on hold. One of the key issues for me was the expansion of Central Park. We wanted to, and we have approved adding 4 new sports fields at Central Park, kind of at the very end. If you go the entrance to kind of the roundabout, you push there into that area, there'll be 4 new fields. That was on track, but we had to put that on hold for this year. That may have to get pushed again, depending on revenue estimates. So we're tracking all of that, and if we have to, we certainly will continue to tighten our belt and just make sure that those core services that a city is expected to provide, that we're able to still meet that and still do that without having to lay off any staff or have any impact to our personnel.
This year, in particular, with the pandemic and everybody worried about health restrictions and worried about their business and worried about justice, equal justice, all eyes are on city council and on the mayor. How do you communicate with everybody during times of crisis like this?
So it's interesting. We talked about that a little bit internally when the pandemic started and when we signed our first emergency order back in March. And the use of our social media platforms really has been a tremendous asset. Aside from your traditional media, being able to host a Facebook Live, on a moment's notice, to keep up with the speed of the orders, the transition of the orders, has really been a significant boost to our ability to communicate directly and to take questions live from those who are watching. I know our communication staff has kept track, but it's we've had several 100,000 engagements on our social media when I've been giving updates and platforms. I mean, at one point, we had 8,000 people watching a city council meeting because they wanted to see us, a vote on an issue. And I mean, it's just that's mind blowing that 8,000 people are tuning into a Santa Clarita
at home. They could be watching Netflix
city
instead.
Council meeting. And I think at one of the lives I did, I think at one point it had over 20,000 views. And I think people really during this time are looking for information and local information, really. How do these orders impact my community? And if the pandemic has done anything positive, it has really educated people about the role of local government. I've always said that what happens in Washington, D.C. and Sacramento certainly is important, but it really doesn't impact your day-to-day life like what happens at the county hall, city hall, your local school boards. That's where your day-to-day life is impacted. And I think a lot of people have seen that over the past several months, the critical role that local governments can play in your in your day-to-day life. So I always wanted to be as honest as I could, give timely, accurate information, and to answer the questions, and take questions and answer them to the best I could. And sometimes not everyone liked those decisions, and we're kind of doing our last one today, and we've decided to close it with our own version of mean tweets. And so our staff has pulled some of the comments from those who may not have agreed with some of the decisions and announcements I made. And so we'll be sharing those tonight as we try to bring a little bit of levity to what has been a challenging year for everybody. But I think as long as you're authentic and you're straightforward and you answer the questions as honestly as you can, people can respect it.
Yeah, you're not going to be reading our names with those tweets, right?
Hey, they all know my names, right? So we'll see. I don't know. I haven't seen them.
Fair enough.
So this is going to be a kind of like a table read for those that do the Watch Hollywood. So I'll be first time seeing the tweets. So hopefully I don't break down when I read them.
So you were just reelected, actual landslide Cameron, right? And so you've got 4 more years at least on the city council. What's next for you? Do you have ambitions to go elsewhere?
I always said that when I ran 4 years ago that I wanted to at least do one reelection to the city council, and then kind of see what happens from there. And that's still where I am. 4 years from now, 2 of my 3 kids will be out of high school, and we'll see what happens with that. So again, I've learned never to. I think there's the quote that kind of says, man plans and God laughs kind of thing. And, if you had told me when I left the assembly in 2012 that 4 years later I'd be back on the city council, I would have said, you're, absolutely crazy. I've done that. I'm moving on to other things. So I'm open to see what's happening. But like I said, when I ran 4 years ago, I knew that I wanted to at least do one more term on the council, and then kind of see where circumstances are from there.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. This is Mayor Cameron Smyth. So everybody, you are listening to Secrets of Tomorrow's Leaders. My name is Koren Young from RK Studios, in partnership with JCI Santa Clarita. You can catch this podcast on YouTube, Facebook, Google Podcasts, iTunes Podcasts, and Spotify.